How good will your favorite NFL team be in 2025? Welcome, football fans, to my way too early rankings of every NFL team entering 2025. This is not based on 2024. This is a prediction. It's a statement about how I feel about every NFL team entering 2025. It's a projection of the offseason and a statement about how good I actually think your team is going to be this next NFL season. So if that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more NFL tier rankings just like this. Next up, we have quarterbacks. So don't forget to subscribe. And of course, let me know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree with my tier rankings in this video. Let's get to it. Let's discuss every NFL team and my statement on how good I think they will be in 2025. So let's start it off with the Arizona Cardinals, who are the first team on the list, and they will fall into one of these 6 tiers. We have the favorite tier as the best teams in football, in my opinion, in 2025. The teams that I think can win the Super Bowl, the teams that I think can win the NFC, the AFC, and capture the whole thing. The dark horse tier are teams that I think may have one or two things that they need to answer this offseason, one or two things that I need to see from this franchise in order for me to believe that they can actually win the Super Bowl, but they're really good teams with a lot of talent and a lot of promise. Playoffs, with a question mark, means that I think they could make the playoffs, maybe just slightly outside the playoffs, but I think they have playoff potential as a team, and this will probably be the most projection-based tier. Mid is just their average. I almost see no high ceiling or no real downside to this team in terms of a low floor. They're relatively high floor, low ceiling in terms of their prospects in 2025. Promising is a team that is maybe on the rise, but they're not necessarily going to be a playoff team, but they're not quite good enough to be considered mid in terms of they're not consistent enough. I don't know enough about them to put them in the mid category. And then the trash category is obvious. The worst teams in the NFL, the teams that I think will probably be picking in the top 5 of the NFL draft this time next year, the 2026 NFL draft. So, no more 2024, 2025. It's time for 2025 NFL season. Let's begin with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals still will have Kyler Murray and Jonathan Gannon at the helm in their leadership positions. Kyler Murray is somebody that I feel like most are loosening their grip on how they feel about Kyler Murray. I think that many are probably considering him a bit overrated, potentially not a guy that they would want to start a franchise with, potentially also overpaid. But Kyler Murray did show some good this season, some bad this season. I feel like him and Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't exactly click consistently this past year. They definitely need to get more out of their top pick from this past draft. Offensively, as a whole, I thought their best aspect was James Conner running the football and James Conner in general. I do think they could use another receiver on the outside, although I like what I've seen from guys like Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. I feel like they could use another receiver to complement, maybe somebody with some vertical dimension to their game. Trey McBride, I think, proved to everybody that he's one of the best tight ends in football, but he couldn't really get into the end zone, which was definitely a problem. The O-line, I think, is okay, but they could definitely upgrade that area of their roster. I think the biggest issues lie on defense. They don't really have a great pass rusher. Their linebacker position is going to be up in the air this offseason. We'll see what they do there. Their secondary is definitely below average. I still like Baker, and I feel like they've got a solid combination of safeties. It feels like they get more out of this defense than what they currently have constituted as talent, right? They do a good job with the scheme, especially early in the season, but it feels like it dwindles towards the end of the year. So this Cardinals team needs to figure out a way to be more consistent throughout an entire season. And I feel like that will begin if they just add more talent to the O-line, to the receiving core, to the defense, to the secondary, to the pass rush. And I think they definitely need to work on that pass rush. They got $70+ million. They're one of the most, needy teams in terms of positions, but also one of the most cap room based teams. They have like top 5 in cap space. So the Arizona Cardinals, I don't think they're going to be great. I mean, when you look at their division, they've got to deal with the 49ers, the Rams, the Seahawks, all teams that as of now I would put ahead of them. I do think that Kyler is a quarterback capable of taking a team to the playoffs, but his overall play has not inspired me to believe that he can do it single-handedly like I didn't believe he could last year. Maybe he's another year removed from the injury, which will help. But I don't know if I'm really in love with the overall coaching staff. I just haven't seen enough from this team in recent seasons. I think that they could be mid just because I don't think Kyler is bad. I don't think their offense is bad. I think it's average. Their defense is probably closer to bad than average, but I don't know. They're really tricky to figure out. Maybe we could put them in promising just because they do have the cap space. They do have a decent enough quarterback. They do have some weapons on offense, the running back, the number 1 receiver, the tight end. They just have so many other holes and so many questions that it's hard to really determine what their potential is. So they need a lot of work, but I guess I could see where you could sell me on this team making like a wild card spot or something. So they're definitely not trash. They're definitely not one of the worst teams. They're definitely not even like consistent enough to be average though, even though they might have finished that way this past season. I'm going to place them in promising. It does hurt that they're probably the least talented team in their own division. The Chicago Bears are up next, and this team's probably going to go all over the map. And honestly, guys, I'm doing this off the top of my head, shooting from the hip. Like, I don't know who I currently think will make the playoffs. I probably have to make an individual video about that. So I don't even know on some of these. I'm just going with my first instinct. But with the Chicago Bears, I feel like they're going to be heavily hyped. I think they're definitely going to make some moves to improve the offensive line. I definitely think that they could improve the defensive line. I really do like Ben Johnson complemented by Dennis Allen on offense and defense, and I think that's an upgrade to both sides of the football. Caleb Williams, I was never the biggest fan of in the first place, and watching him as a rookie, I thought he was probably the worst starting quarterback that was a rookie this past year. Some of that had to do with the offense. Some of that had to do with the O-line. Some of that just had to do with Caleb not having a good deep ball, not being patient, and understanding, the NFL game in terms of his pocket presence and taking too many sacks and just playing into pressure and things like that. I think if he can be sped up in his game and therefore more accurate, more on time, that's something where he can grow fast. He's definitely got all the tools to be successful. I do think with Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, and then, of course, DJ Moore, they have enough on the perimeter and weaponry-wise to make some things happen, but they'll most likely lose Keenan Allen, so that would hurt a little bit because he was pretty good for them. The running back position, I think they could use an upgrade from DeAndre Swift, especially with how important that Ben Johnson wants to run the football. That aspect is so important. The O-line, I'm intrigued to see how much coaching can improve them because, again, guys, I've said it many times, like, if you go to the PFF offensive line grades, like, individually, they actually graded well, but as a unit, they did not grade well, and as a offense, they did not perform well, and part of that was on Caleb, but I feel like the O-line could use work. It might take some time for Ben to really, truly install his offense in the way that he wants it to run, and to be able to get that balance out of it, and to be able to get Ben to see Caleb in the right way and for Caleb to play the right way. Defensively, I feel like they're solid, and I think Dennis Allen's going to be good with this group, but I don't know if he necessarily has the pieces for his defense. This was a defense that was more based around a totally separate type of scheme and, a Matt Eberflus style. So it's going to take some changes on both sides of the ball. They're also probably still the worst team in their division when you consider they have Detroit, they have Green Bay, and they have Minnesota. Minnesota is going through, of course, the quarterback change with J.J. McCarthy, but they probably have the better coaching. They probably have the more talented team overall, more certainty in their schemes. So understanding that, I think Chicago, they could certainly be a playoff team if everything goes right. They could be an average team. Maybe I'll put them there, but I feel like promising is the right category because, okay, are we going to project them to be like, what's the ceiling for this team? Probably like 11 wins or something like that. If Caleb plays well, if they get an improvement on the O-line, if they get improvement on the D-line, if the coaching really helps. Maybe I'm underselling them. Maybe I do need to move them up. So I'm considering all this at the same time. Maybe I should put them in mid. Like that would be a logical step forward just because you feel like their coaching would be better and the quarterback play would be better. So maybe I'll put them in mid, but I don't really know because I'm not exactly sold on Caleb like everybody else is. And I do feel like it's going to take some time in this division for this team to develop and for them to get the right pieces in place. And I don't have a lot of confidence in their front office too. So I'll put them in mid because I could see them being better than last year, at least more professionally built. But I'm not sold that they're going to make this miraculous leap from last year. I'm definitely not sold on that. The Atlanta Falcons are next. Raheem Morris is still the head coach and entering his second season. Michael Penix will be the quarterback. Kirk Cousins is gone already. The O-line is steady, but not great. I think it's a little bit overrated, to be honest. Bijan's one of the best backs in football. Drake London had probably a breakout season last year. They still can't really figure out the enigma that is Kyle Pitts. Darnell Mooney was a nice little addition to this offense, and I didn't mind the offense as a whole for a majority of the year. It just felt like maybe they could add, secondary receiver at the number 3 spot and just some improvement from quarterback overall. The scheme to me was also like rather kind of vanilla for a majority of the year. It was kind of like a basic Sean McVay offense. I wasn't wowed by it. Bijan Robinson was good, but the run game was solid, but I wasn't wowed. So Atlanta offensively does have some questions. Penix obviously entering the year is one of the more unproven quarterbacks in football, if not the most unproven other than the rookies that will probably start. And the defense is not very talented. They don't have a great pass rush. A lot of their better players are old. Jesse Bates is amazing, but other than that, and I do like Caden Ellis at linebacker, AJ Terrell at corner. I guess they've got one or two pieces, but it didn't, as a collective whole, come together for Raheem Morris. So he's going to need some pass rushers. He's going to need to be better against the run. He's going to need to solidify his secondary. There's a lot of holes here. Now, the NFC South is a really weak division. The Saints could be pretty bad. They've got a new coach. I don't know what's going to take place with all the veterans on the team and the cap space and all that sort of stuff. Carolina could be maybe a little bit better if they make some improvements to their roster. Tampa Bay is still probably that steady force of the division. Atlanta, though, I wouldn't be shocked if they were the worst team in the division or the second worst team in the division. I don't necessarily see them as borderline playoff team. I don't know if they're even mid. I'll probably put them in promising just because they have the unknown of the quarterback. Penix could be good, but he could suck at the same time. I do think they have enough around that quarterback on offense to make this a pretty successful overall offense. And if they could find some additions to the defense that could make them better, then that would definitely be big for them. But I don't think they're going to be one of the worst teams. That would only really, in my opinion, happen if Penix is just really, really bad. So I'll put them in the promising section for the sake of this video. The Green Bay Packers are up next. The Packers are interesting. Are they going to continue to make the playoffs, but maybe bow out early? Will they make the necessary improvements to move up and to develop? And to me, the Packers are heavily dependent on what they do this offseason because Christian Watson enters the offseason with a torn ACL. Their receiving core in general is kind of lacking that number one receiver, as Josh Jacobs did state. Josh Jacobs was an awesome addition and a great running back for them this year. Their O-line is good and fairly young, like they're in their prime. Jordan Love might actually take some improvement steps this year. He did have an awkward sort of sophomore slump because he had the injury and things like that he was working through. I like some of the aspects of the offense like Dobbs and like Kraft and Reed, but they're more so complementary options. I love Matt LaFleur in terms of giving you a steady floor for the offense and the team, and he wins a lot of games generally, especially in the regular season. Defensively, I thought they did improve from a schematical sense. Their pass rush declined. Their secondary is pretty weak, especially at corner. They need to find those improvements. But they have a lot of the other pieces. Maybe one more pass rusher could help. But they've got a lot of defensive linemen. They're good against the run. Their linebackers were decent last year. McKinney was a huge improvement for them. This Packer team, man, they're really interesting because honestly, like I could see them going to the Super Bowl at their best if they can make some great improvements. I could see them, being in the playoffs, but then kind of being a little disappointing again. I could see them even declining if things don't go their way. But honestly, they don't have a lot of free agents, so that's a good thing. And they don't have like too many improvements. They might be a dark horse, but it kind of depends on what you think. Like I think Jordan Love's okay. He's pretty good, maybe. Is he great? I don't know. It's tough. Matt LaFleur is good. I'm gonna say playoffs because like I'm equally between. I could see them maybe taking that step, but I could also maybe see them taking a decline or like a step backwards. It's hard for me to not believe in Matt LaFleur though. Just what he's proven the last few years, I feel like he gives them a very good floor. I just don't know if I have the trust in the front office for them to push the right buttons to improve this team. They're very conservative in their nature, so we'll see if they make those improvements. But Packers fans, let me know what you think about that. The Baltimore Ravens are up next. I would see them as a favorite. I think that the Ravens do have arguably the best quarterback over the past 2 seasons in the NFL, Lamar Jackson. They do have an offensive line that had to be completely reworked from last year to this year. And for the most part, they will stay together. Now, Ronnie Stanley is a key one. Is he going to leave? Are they going to have to replace him? He's probably going to get quite a bit of money on the open market. That would be potentially their biggest loss this offseason. But they do have some really good fundamentals, right? They've got Derrick Henry, who still played great last year. Hopefully doesn't fall off too drastically entering another NFL season. Zay Flowers had a breakout season, Pro Bowl season. He didn't play against the Bills. He should be back and in form and be an absolute explosive option. Maybe another improvement in terms of what he was last year to next year. He could be even better. Isaiah Likely could be even a bigger force than last year. Mark Andrews did have the dropsies in the Bills game, but still a steady force as well. They need to find some complementary wide receiver options. Rashad Bateman was much better this year than I've ever seen him, but like a number 3 would be nice just to add a little versatility to the offense. Defensively, I think they really showed a lot of improvement as the year went on. They were really poor at the beginning against the pass, but then as the year went on, they got better and better and better. But how much longer are you going to rely on an old Kyle Van Noy to be your best edge rusher? So improvement there could be needed. Interior D-line is always a strength of this team. They could maybe improve at secondary linebacker, but you've got Roquan, you've got Kyle Hamilton still in their prime. Marlon Humphrey did come off like arguably the best year of his career, or at least one of them. So maybe he could fall off next year a little bit, but I do love that Wiggins kid. I think he's going to be a really good player. Maybe they could improve their corner 3 spot, their free safety spot. Marcus Williams kind of fell off this year, got injured. They might have to replace him. So the Ravens do need some improvements. But overall, when you look at the core of their team, they were able to keep their offensive coordinator intact, Todd Monken, with Lamar Jackson, who's playing at an elite level the last 2 years. Their offensive line doesn't have to go through a complete reworking, you would think. Zay Flowers in his prime. Derrick Henry, we saw what he was able to do within this offense. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. The defense improving and probably being top 10 next year. And then not having the whole deal of you going from Mike McDonald to Orr and trying to figure out how that's going to operate and work. Like, there's more continuity with this team now entering next year. So I feel like the Ravens are in a really good spot to improve and find the necessary improvements to put them over the top as a potential Super Bowl winning team. So that's why I would put them in the favorites category. I think that they do need a couple subtle tweaks on offense and defense that maybe people are overlooking, like the pass rush, like the secondary and key spots like corner 3, free safety, and the O-line is questionable on the left, but I feel like they should be mostly in a great spot compared to a lot of other teams. Detroit Lions, I don't see the Lions as a favorite, and the reason I would say I don't see the Lions as a favorite is because they lost their offensive and defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, to the Jets, Ben Johnson, the Bears. They lost numerous position coaches, which is real rough. So that's going to hurt their whole infrastructure. It puts a lot more pressure on Dan Campbell, which is very difficult, right? The brain drain is real across the NFL, right? Just ask the 49ers, for example. I would also say, was last year or the year before their opportunity in some way? Jared Goff is playing the best football of his career. I'd still probably expect him to play well next year. Their O-line should still be really good. I do think Kevin Zeitler is a free agent, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe they have to replace him or re-sign him. But otherwise, everybody's coming back on offense, which is great. That's a great start because their offense has been one of the best in football the last 2 years. So the fact that they'll have Amon-Ra, they'll have Sam Laporta, they'll have Jamison Williams intact, they'll have, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. They'll have all their pieces on offense. Defensively, too, they're going to get healthier. And I love the improvements from guys like Jack Campbell. I thought Branch took another step forward. I thought that Arnold was up and down and inconsistent, but he showed enough flashes to be maybe a CB2 in the NFL. They need to find a CB1. Carlton Davis is a free agent. That's their biggest need, on top of finding a complement to Aiden Hutchinson. But Hutchinson, one of the best defenders in football, and he'll be back. McNeil and Reeder on the inside is a good start. Like, they've got a lot of things there. I really like Anzalone too. I'm not sure how much longer he can play at that level, but the Lions have a lot of pieces from a roster standpoint. I'm just really concerned about the downside of the roster in terms of the scheme, like regressing and that really hurting the talent, and that being the reason they're not able to get to where they want to go. Perhaps maybe this on paper, if they were able to keep all their coaches, this might have been the year for them. Because you looked at how they played last year with their pieces and their team and their health. And then once they lost that health on defense, they did fall off quite a bit. So it does kind of suck that all the coaches decided to leave this offseason, but that's just what happens in the NFL. You've got a very small window to execute. I would call the Lions a dark horse. The reason I would say that is because I think that they're not a favorite due to the coaching, but I think if they can find adequate replacements on the offensive and defensive side for the coordinators, if they can get over the losses of the positional coaches, and if they can be a healthier roster where they find the subtle tweaks to defensive end, to cornerback, and they just fill out that offensive line to be at the same level or near the same level as last year, they should be in a very good position to compete for the NFC. But it's going to be by answering more questions than we previously had, because we knew what Ben Johnson was going to bring. We knew what Aaron Glenn was going to bring. And trust me, like, I don't know how many positional coaches it's been, but it's a lot, and that's a lot to go through. So yeah, they've got to answer those coaching problems, but I think if they can be in the Super Bowl for sure. Okay. The Carolina Panthers are up next. I would put the Panthers in promising. Pretty easy decision for me, because I thought Bryce Young actually really surprised me last year and played really good football. I thought that the O-line was actually low-key really, really good for them last season, especially with the additions they were able to make. I think the interesting thing about Carolina is that they don't have a ton of cap space, and they've got a ton of holes, especially on defense. Like, this team has a lot of holes on defense: linebacker, safety, corner, like pass rusher, like everywhere. So they're going to have to make some key decisions on defense. I still think they're a year or maybe two away from being like a real team. Could they surprise in a bad division? Yes, I do think so, because Canales did get this team playing well by the end of the year. Bryce Young was playing really well by the end of the season. The O-line is steady. Hubbard provided a good, solid running game. But like, are they going to continue to get incredible play out of old man Adam Thielen and things like that? And are you going to be able to survive with the worst defense in football? That being said, like, can their defense just get to average? And that would allow them to maybe squeak 7, 8, 9 wins, through the door and win the division at 9-8 or something. So I do think there's promise here, but they're going to have to make some big improvements defensively. We'll see what they do. And Bryce is going to have to continue to play at the level he did for like the back half of the season, and not like the previous Bryce Young that we saw in his rookie season and the first half of last year. If he can continue that, then they have a chance to win the division. So I'll put them in promising, kind of similar to Atlanta, flawed football teams, but you have enough kind of understanding and enough argument to be able to see the promise in the team. The Indianapolis Colts, this is tough because I think Steichen is a decent coach. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's bad. The O-line is good, like outright good. They don't really have any holes on the O-line. I think center is a free agent for them. Kelly is a free agent. He's aging though. I wonder if they'll bring him back. I think their receiving core is low-key really good. I like Pittman, Downs, Pierce, Mitchell. They've got a lot of pieces. Jonathan Taylor, healthy entering next year, is dangerous. Their run game will be good because of the O-line. And the defense is somewhat flawed. I do like that they got rid of Gus Bradley, though, and brought in a different philosophy, a different face. That is nice. I think that will be a welcome change. Their defensive line is still really talented. So I'm looking forward to seeing even healthier defensive line entering next year, because they did lose a player or two, at the beginning of last season and by the end of the season. They need to maybe improve some areas on defense, especially with the scheme potential change there in the back end of their defense. But it really comes down to quarterback. And honestly, I don't think they have a quarterback. I don't think they've got one that I really like. Anthony Richardson is pretty awful. I'm not sure if they're going to bring anybody else in to compete with him or to replace him. Maybe they even make a bold decision in the draft. We'll see. But I just think this team kind of needs a year of like figuring out what's going on at quarterback. They're probably going to be a team because they've got a lot of talent on other positions. Like they're a team to me that I feel like they could be better because the sum of its parts are good, but the quarterback just wears them down. It's tough though. I mean, I don't really want to say they're trash because I don't really see them picking in the top 5. I think they have too much talent. And I think Steichen is not a terrible coach. I guess they're somewhat promising, but I guess it kind of comes down to the quarterback. And they're in a weaker division. It's not like their division is crazy good. This one's tough, man. I don't know really where to put the Colts, to be honest. I could see an argument for any of these. Honestly, I can't put them in mid just because their quarterback position is too much of a question mark. They could be trash. I mean, it's possible just because the quarterback's so bad. But I'm gonna put them in promising, I guess. That's tough, man. I might have to move some of these teams around. Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, so the Bengals, they clearly need to rework their defense. They made a defensive coordinator change. We'll see if that actually helps or not. They do need to get a bit faster, a bit younger, a bit better on defense, really at all 3 levels. They made a decision to move on from Pratt at linebacker. They don't have too many free agents on the defensive side, though. I think Mike Hilton might be a free agent, but that might be a welcome change for their defense if they could just get better at that spot in terms of coverage, but he's been a good player for them for a number of years. Offensively, they pretty much have all their pieces intact. It comes down to if T. Higgins is going to be there or not. And that's obviously a huge question mark. It feels like leaning towards no, but even if T. Higgins is gone, I think they still would be a good offense because Burrow is awesome. I think the O-line could use a little bit of improvement, especially on the interior. But I think their tackles are fine. I love Chase Brown. I love Jamar Chase, obviously the best receiver in the league. I think they could maybe add another receiver to replace T. Higgins, but I don't think it would take anything crazy. Maybe somebody like Cooper Kupp, for example. Defensively, it's going to come down to, okay, is Higgins there? Is Higgins not there? And defensively, can they go from really bad to like average? And if that's the case, they could be a really, really good team. They could be a contender. If they stay bad on defense and they don't re-sign Higgins, they could be a severe disappointment. But that being said, it's hard for me to just see Joe Burrow missing the playoffs 2 years in a row with him having one of the best seasons in the NFL and him being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I'll put them in playoffs or maybe even dark horse. But they do have quite a few problems with their team. So I'm going to just put them in playoffs just because they have so many questions to answer on defense. They have so many improvements to make on defense. And they do need to, we need to see what this T. Higgins thing is going to do. That being said, later in the offseason, this might be a team where I'm like, oh, they're in the Super Bowl. They're in the AFC Championship. They're a favorite. They're a contender. They're a dark horse. Kind of really depends on what I think they're going to do. Man, do I want to put them in dark horse just because of that? Because I'm trying to project my thought on this team moving forward. But my thought does depend on their front office, and the front office is not very good. I don't have a lot of faith in it. It's one of the worst. Their ownership is not the greatest. That being said, I just have so much faith in Joe Burrow. I have so much faith in elite quarterback play and what that can do for a team. So I'll keep them in playoffs for now, but I could very well put them in dark horse, and that might be, maybe by the end of the video, I might even change my mind. Dallas Cowboys, I think they're mid pretty easily. I mean, that's a very good mid team. I mean, they could be a playoff team. I wouldn't be shocked by that, but they're going through a coaching change from McCarthy to Schottenheimer. Will that spark the team or will that hurt the team? McCarthy, I actually felt like didn't do a poor job this past season. They do have some elite players like Micah Parsons on defense, CeeDee Lamb on offense. Their O-line is actually kind of bad, and that's a concern, especially if Zach Martin retires or ends up going to a different team. He is a free agent. Rico Dowdle is also a free agent at running back. Will they replace him? Will they re-sign him? I feel like, they need a number 2 receiver to complement CeeDee Lamb. Ferguson's fine at tight end, but the O-line's a concern. Dak is kind of... Is he past his peak? Is he past the best we've seen from him? Or can he still play at that top 12, top 10 level that he's been flirting with his entire career? The defense could be better this year just because they could be healthier. Diggs could be healthier. Bland could be healthier. I like their corners, and overall their secondary is solid. I do think they need improvement at linebacker. Their defensive line, they've got some ballers, but they've also got some free agents up there as well. So, Lawrence should be back, I guess. But, yeah, I think they're mid. I think they're going to win 8, 9, maybe 10 at their best, 7 at their worst, somewhere in that range. They've got enough talent to compete, but it feels like they're not as well-rounded as past seasons. It feels like the coaching change, we'll see how that goes. Dak Prescott's got looming questions. The team is kind of in flux. Jerry Jones has lost his mind. There's a lot going on there. It's a clown show. But the Dallas Cowboys should be mid. Feels like that era of Tony Romo Cowboys where they just didn't have a well-rounded team and they just had too many holes. And they need to rework and rebuild this team, especially at the line of scrimmage where they were so strong a couple years ago. Feels like they're not as strong now. The Houston Texans, I think, are a dark horse for sure. The Texans, I could see being excellent this next season. I saw a stat where CJ Stroud was more pressured on average per game than Patrick Mahomes was in the Super Bowl, which is insane. CJ Stroud was the most pressured and hurried quarterback in the NFL. If you can fix the offensive line of the Texans, that could take this team from a divisional round team to being extremely scary. Because if you give Stroud time, I feel like he's one of those guys that with confidence, he can put the ball anywhere. He's one of the more accurate placement passers in football. And once he gets his groove and he's able to buy time and sit and be relaxed behind an offensive line, he can really dice you up. Nico Collins is dynamic. I think Mixon still showed he can play at a high level, and the run game will only improve with a better O-line. Nick Caserio knows what to do. I have faith in Nick Caserio. I think he's made great improvements to this team year after year. He really did have an oversight with the O-line, but I don't think anyone really saw it going as poorly as it did. I think there was more faith in Bobby Slowick than maybe there should have been. Bobby Slowick was a huge reason I think this thing failed on offense this past year. Tank Dell getting hurt again does hurt, but I think they could bring back Diggs, or they could go and look in a different direction like Cooper Kupp, or I think they'll look at a veteran number 3 to help solidify that and that depth for Tank Dell eventually returning. Dalton Schultz is fine at tight end. I think offensively, it's mostly going to center around offensive line installation, really protecting CJ Stroud, finding a secondary receiver for Nico Collins. Then defensively, I mean, they don't really even have a lot of free agents, I don't think. Can Daniil Hunter continue to play at this level? Will Danico Autry return and play at that level that he did at the end of the year? Their corners are awesome on the outside. They could use improvement at safety and nickel corner, but I love their linebackers too. So I think the Texans are in a great spot. I love the offensive coordinator change. They definitely need an offensive lineman change. And if they can find that, this could be its Super Bowl team, because I thought they had the second best defense in the league this year, only behind Philadelphia by the end of the year. And I feel like they've got a quarterback. They've got enough weapons. They've got a great defense. That's enough right there. And D'Amico's a solid coach. So they're a dark horse for sure. Cleveland Browns, I think, could be trash. I'm not going to lie. I like Schwartz and I like Stefanski, but their O-line could be worse than we've seen in recent years. They're getting very old on that front. Conklin on the right, he's been injured and older. Now he's in his mid-30s. Batonio's getting old. Pochich is getting old. Even Wyatt Teller is aging. Left tackle, I think he's a free agent. If not, he's not very good in general. I love Njoku. Nick Chubb's a free agent. What will happen there? Running back has completely fallen off. And the offense in general, their status in terms of their identity without Nick Chubb has taken a major hit over the last couple of years when he's not been playing. Jerry Jeudy was a nice find for them, and he played well. But without Amari Cooper, it felt like, he was so good 2 years ago. Without that number 1 receiver element, like Jeudy is in my opinion, like a really good 2, and he was fed like a 1, but you kind of need another guy to work off of him, in my opinion. Cedric Tillman showed flashes, like Elijah Moore showed, like he's a good 3, I guess, but they need another guy there. Obviously, quarterback is so bad. They rather need to draft one, or they need to, maybe they bring back Jameis just to keep that locker room together for a season before they eventually carry over next year, like a bridge option so that they can find a quarterback as a rookie, find a different alternative. Maybe they go out and make a splash, but that's very unlikely. Myles Garrett asking for a trade is a huge thing in terms of a huge importance of why I'd put them in trash, because Myles Garrett makes that defense what it is. He anchors the D-line. He anchors their ability to press the quarterback. He is the guy that's constantly being double teamed. He is such a big part of this defense. Now, I love their corners. I think they have one of the best set of trio cornerbacks in football, but otherwise, like, their linebackers are spotty. Their safeties are up and down. Their D-line outside of Myles Garrett has been a little up and down too, and there's a lot of aging elements there. They've kind of been replacing their D tackles year after year, and even that DN spot, they got rid of Zadarius Smith. So this roster has taken a huge hit because they counted on Deshaun Watson being a stud, and he's not. He's nowhere close. So that is huge for them. I think they're going to be bad. Like, I think almost intentionally. I hope that they're bad with Jameis, though, because at least it'll be entertaining. But I'm almost rather Jameis go somewhere where he's, on someone fun, I guess. But like the Colts. But I don't know. Jameis on the Colts, that would be sick. But, the Browns, actually, Colts, bro, go get Jameis. Seriously. Like, that would be a great fit, honestly. That would be a great fit. I'm just throwing that out. I might have to make a video. The Cleveland Browns, I think they're going to be really bad, guys. I really do. Jacksonville is interesting. I'm going to throw them in the mid because I think their quarterback is mid, Trevor Lawrence, as long as he's healthy. I think that Liam Cohen will improve the offense. I'm looking forward to that. I like their running backs. I don't love them. I think Tank Bigsby is underrated. We'll see what happens with Christian Kirk and whether or not he returns or they try to replace him. Love Brian Thomas, absolute stud. Evan Ingram's still decent. Gabe Davis sucks, like we knew this before. I kind of like Parker Washington. I think they have enough pieces for Liam Cohen to work with already. The offensive line is not great. They could definitely improve that area, and that might be the biggest decline for Liam Cohen going from Tampa to Jacksonville, especially at tackle, where I thought Tampa was good. But we'll see. I think Lawrence could have a little bit of a bounce back here in this system. I think the way he plays does fit what Cohen wants to do in terms of intermediate and deep passing, complemented by a run game and a screen game, where I feel like Lawrence was very good at Clemson. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes for him. Defensively, they are interesting because they were very bad last year on defense. But I don't think like their pieces are awful. They've got 2 defensive ends that I like. Josh Allen is a stud. Their linebackers are pretty good overall. I mean, Alua Khan kind of getting a little bit older. Campbell is a number 1 corner in my opinion. He just was very injured this past season. But their cornerback position, the way they were trying to play as a defense, they were over aggressive. They were too much man coverage. It didn't really work. Their safeties got exposed. They need to drastically change their philosophy defensively. So I think their defense will still be below average. And I think their offense will just be maybe a little bit above average, which honestly equates to a mid team. So that's kind of how I see Jacksonville. I think they'll be around like 8 and 9. That's sort of range right now. Kansas City. Obviously they were the repeat champs. They were going for the 3-peat, but they got absolutely obliterated in the Super Bowl. And that has kind of opened our eyes to how many questions this team might have moving forward. So for the first time, and it feels like a couple seasons, I'm not just immediately going to place them in the favorites. It does appear that Travis Kelce, as of recently, announced that he's probably going to play one more year. That being said, Travis Kelce is not very good anymore, so I don't know how much it matters. It actually might hurt the team long term. Offensive line, they definitely need to find a left tackle, and they could improve on right tackle, but I don't know if they're necessarily going to try to replace Jawan Taylor, but he sucks too. The interior O-line, Tooney's getting older, but you would expect that left guard he'll still remain steady for a year or two. Creed Humphrey is awesome, and Trey Smith is a free agent. So their offensive line is really in shambles because they need a left tackle, a right guard. Their left guard's getting old. Their right tackle sucks. So their O-line is bad. Rashee Rice is going to really help. Xavier Worthy is a stud. They'll need a number 3 receiver, somebody that can work the underneath areas and maybe help, if Worthy can be that downfield target. But again, they're going to have to think about their philosophy offensively. They're going to have to expand. They're going to have to be more aggressive next year. Their running back position is also kind of in flux. Like, is Pacheco their guy? Hunt is a free agent. Hunt was kind of better than Pacheco this year, but he's also old and probably not going to be the same player next year if they re-sign him. So they'll probably run with Pacheco and maybe like draft a later rookie or something like that. I wouldn't hate that. But running back's not very important on this team. Defensively, I think they're probably going to be the better. I don't know. I mean, defensively, Chris Jones getting a little bit older, and he was very beat up in the Super Bowl. Karlaftis is good. They need another D tackle and another DN. They need to improve their defensive line. And that's my biggest question. Like, I love Andy Reid. I love Spags. Mahomes is Mahomes. And I like the receivers, I like the 1 and the 2. I feel like their O-line and their D-line is in a worse spot than I feel like it's been in a number of years. They have McDuffie. Their safeties are okay. Reed is a free agent, though. Bolton is a free agent. Like, honestly, I kind of want to put that. This is maybe crazy, and I'm not even hating, guys. I'm going to put them in playoffs. Like, and this is more like playoffs without a question mark. Like, I think they'll make the playoffs, but they have a lot of holes. You think about this team, like, they've got holes on the O-line, holes on the D-line. They've got to re-sign their best safety. They've got to re-sign their best linebacker. I mean, that's tough, guys. Like, they're going to have to make a lot. Obviously, you got Mahomes and Reed, and that can make them a favorite. So maybe out of respect, you could put them in dark horse. But honestly, bro, it's not like it was. I'll definitely say that. They're definitely not a favorite, in my opinion. So I'll put them in dark horse out of respect, because I guess the Texans and the Lions have similar questions. Lions, not as much in personnel, more in coaching. Texans have obviously a huge critical flaw that they have to solve. But the Chiefs have a number of flaws from a personnel standpoint that they have to solve. Next, you've got the LA Chargers. The Chargers are really interesting. I actually think that the Chargers, so let's just think about this. So Khalil Mack's a free agent. Joey Bosa, I think, could be gone. That is the one area I'm concerned about is the pass rush. I'm concerned about how their pass rush projects forward with those players potentially being removed. I like Henley a lot. Derwin James was incredible this year. Their corners are kind of like not that important in their new defense. Like they kind of just play a lot of soft zone. So I'm not too concerned. And they also have a couple young guys at that spot. I think Asante Samuel's a free agent, but he didn't play much last year. Their interior D-line could use improvement. Their interior O-line could use improvement. And wide receiver could use improvement. J.K. Dobbins also a free agent. They have a lot of cap space, though. They've got Jim Harbaugh going into next year. They've got their coordinators returning. No problems there. Herbert with another year with Roman should be nice. Actually, finding personnel that can fit Roman would be also nice in terms of the run game, where they could be very improved. Vlad McConkey is a stud. I also kind of like that Smart kid at tight end. They do need another receiver, though, and I think they'll try their best to get one. I kind of think they're a dark horse because I like Herbert a lot, and I feel like Harbaugh always gets better, and they were already a playoff team. That being said, though, they've got Denver in their division. They've got Kansas City in their division. Could they take a step back? I mean, maybe. It would have to take a lot of stupid decisions in the offseason because I didn't think they were a very talented team last year, and I thought they did a lot with the talent that they had. So I'm going to put them in dark horse. Because I like the defensive coordinator a lot. And Herbert on offense can carry it. So, yeah. All right. Rams are up next. This one is weird because, like, Stafford is on the block, apparently, which makes no sense. But how much longer can Stafford play at this level? That's another question. I mean, the last couple of years, he's been incredible, especially near the end of the season for both times, like the last two seasons. The year that they didn't really have Stafford, they sucked. The defense is young up front. Their linebackers are slow and honestly terrible. They need to improve their linebackers. They need to improve their corners. But their safeties, I like their safeties, and I love their defensive line. So I'm really into that spot. I felt like Shula did a great job too. I like Shula. Sean McVay's a great coach, a great culture guy, great in terms of steady. I know what I'm going to get there. I do think he could evolve his offense a little more. And without Cooper Kupp, I'm intrigued to see if they go after another receiver. Their O-line, they did get better last offseason, but it felt like they never truly took form by the end of the year. Kyron Williams, I kind of think is overrated, but he's productive in the offense. Puka's a beast. Hopefully can remain healthy. That's another one where like he kind of feels like he's just going to be a guy that's always hurt. They had Higbee signed and he's kind of getting old. There's a lot of flaws on this roster. But it feels like they also have the fundamentals at a very high level. Like they've got a quarterback as long as Stafford stays. They've got a number one receiver. I feel decent about their O-line. I love their D-line. And I like their defensive coordinator. And those are all elements that make you a successful NFL team. So it does depend. If they trade Stafford, though, this completely goes out the window. So I'm going to put them in the playoffs, and I could see them as a dark horse, but it kind of depends on what they do this offseason, for sure. So I'll put them here. That's fair, I think. The Raiders are up next. The Raiders have Pete Carroll as their head coach now, which is an improvement, I would say. I like the Chip Kelly hire actually a lot. Defensive coordinator-wise, they still stay the same. I thought he was very underrated. Max Crosby, I think, is going to stay on the team. Christian Wilkins returns, which is huge. I thought Tyree Wilson was playing better by the end of the year. Malcolm Kuntz, is he a free agent? If he's back, that would be nice because their D-line could be really good if that's the case. And that helps a lot. But their back end is really bad. So that's a question. O-line is solid. And with a solid O-line, solid D-line, That's a good foundation, but it feels like they won't have a quarterback and they don't have a number one receiver. Brock Bowers, I guess, but he's a tight end. Jacoby Myers, he's good. Running back is a question. I would say, honestly, bro, like, I love the Raiders, but I feel like trash is probably the right answer. Just because I feel like this season's going to be all about culture, building, kind of constructing the roster, reconstructing the culture, the locker room, potentially going with a rookie quarterback or an Aiden O'Connell type, which is like a bridge. So they're probably going to be picking at the top of the draft next year. But I do think that the moves that they've made and just the way they project, it's good for the long term, but I feel like that's going to hurt them next year, if that makes sense. They need to kind of rebuild. I know that sucks to hear as a Raiders fan because that's all they've ever been doing, but that's kind of the way that I see it. So I have them in the trash. Miami, I think Miami is mid, bro. I'm not going to lie. I think Miami is mid. I don't know why it won't let me move. My mouse is on coke. Hold on a second. Bro. I can't move the team. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I think Miami is mid. I think Mike McDaniel generally as a head coach is a little overrated. I think as a play designer and a play caller, he's good. I think Tua is a constant worry and honestly good at executing their system. Good, solid quarterback for that team. But he also, with the injuries, with the need of the offense being so refined and constructed, and the need of great weaponry. If Tyreek Hill, let's say, just falls off, if he becomes a nuisance to the team, if they have to trade him, he's a concern, right? So I'm concerned about that. The O-line, Teron Armstead, is older than dirt. We'll see what happens there. The O-line in general has been pretty poor. Can they improve that area? Like the running back. I like Jonnu. I think he'll be sticking around, so that's good. Waddle hopefully can be healthier this year and consistent and be that number one receiver because I'm actually concerned about Tyreek. Like, I'm legitimately concerned both on and off the field. Defensively, I like some of their players, but I feel like some of them are old. I feel like their D-line the interior is kind of weak. I like Zach Sealer. The edge is good, though. I mean, Chubb got hurt. Phillips got hurt. Those are question marks, but I like Chop Robinson long term. Ramsey is still there for now, so we'll see how that goes, but he wasn't great last year. And their back end is kind of slow and old, and I'm not sure about safety. I think this is a team that's regressing. I think the last couple of years, they had more talent. They were younger. They were more in their prime. There was more of a vision of what they were. They spent their money. Their offseason is very critical, though. I really don't see this Miami team being that much of a threat for the AFC, honestly. Like, I think they have too many questions to answer, too many holes, too many questions. Honestly, this year could end up with McDaniel being fired. Honestly, probably not even his fault. But I could see so many problems with this team from a circus sense and also from just a team sense. I think it's going to be pretty bad. But they have enough talent and they have good enough coaching to feel like they're going to win 7, 8, 9 games. I don't know if they'll be a 10-11 win team, though. I also don't think they'll be like a 6-5 win team. They'll be in that 7-9 win range, I think. Maybe 10, but we'll see. Buffalo, they're a favorite. I think one of the things that people are missing about Buffalo is last offseason, they really had to kind of rediscover themselves. They needed new safeties. They needed to, figure out, the long term of their linebacker position. Their defensive line was in flux to a certain degree. Their offense, they lost Stephon Diggs, or they traded Stephon Diggs. They kind of needed to rediscover what they were on offense and what their identity was going to be around Josh Allen. And now entering next year, they're going to have one of the better O-lines in the league where they're not really losing anybody, I don't think. James Cook is having this dilemma right now with his contract, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. At wide receiver, I really like Khalil Shakir. Coleman is a question mark, but has potential. I feel like if they could add like a big time threat at that position via trade, via signing, or maybe even another draft pick there. Kincaid is at tight end, solid enough, and he was dealing with injuries this year. Josh is one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the league. Defensively is where I think they really need to look to improve, whether it be a big time safety, a big time pass rusher. And I think what they could do is they could go out and get a big time edge rusher to really help them get home on the quarterback. Their corners, I like Benford, and him getting hurt against Kansas City was huge. I like Teron Johnson, but he's getting a little older. Milano and Bernard are very good in the middle. I think they need a big-time pass rusher. I think they maybe need one big-time safety. But there's not a lot that they really need to add. Like 3 players could really make this team a Super Bowl team because they were close last year. So if they could add like 3 players to round out this team, they'll be in a good spot. That being said, I don't have a lot of faith in Sean McDermott in the playoffs, but we're talking about them getting there and being a legitimate threat once they get there. And it feels like they've been that since 2020. And I feel like they'll be that again. They actually have less questions than they've had in recent years. And they've got such a good foundation with their offensive coordinator, with their quarterback, with their offensive line, and their offensive situation that they have a very high floor as well. So that's why I have them as a favorite. They actually have less concerns than the Ravens potentially entering the offseason. The Ravens maybe have a little bit more talent, but they have more concerns. So we'll maybe order this at the end, guys. The Minnesota Vikings are up next. The Vikings, I think, are going to be average just because I'm not sure what I'm going to get from J.J. McCarthy. I feel like he's got talent. I could see how it would work. At the same time, he's going to be very inexperienced, coming off of an injury. I love their coaches, O'Connell and Flores. How Flores continues to be allowed to be a defensive coordinator, not a head coach, is beyond me. Their defense is very good. I do think they were old in the secondary and slow in the secondary. I think they could use some speed. I like their front seven quite a bit, though. I'm not too concerned about that area. I love Jonathan Grenard and Van Ginkel especially, and Phillips is a grinder in there. Offensive line-wise, I think once they get Darisaw back, that's going to greatly improve them. They've got Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson. Hawkinson healthier. They need a running back for sure, and they need to find a running game. That's also for sure. I could see them being like a 9-win team and maybe even squeaking in the playoffs, but I don't think they'll be as good as last year. I thought they just found all the right rhythm, all the right circumstance went their way. And they tend to have like one really good year and one kind of average year, and then one really good year and one kind of average year. That's kind of what they've been doing. So I kind of feel like that's the way that team will be, considering I still see the Lions and the Packers with more solidified solutions and situations. I just feel more confident about quarterback. I feel like I just feel more stability with those teams than the Vikings. The Vikings have some upside, and we'll probably talk about that throughout the offseason, but I'm not quite sold on them like some others. But I'm also not a big JJ McCarthy guy, so I could be proven wrong. The New England Patriots. Now, I'm obviously biased. The Patriots, I think, will be like the most aggressive team this offseason. I think whether that's bringing in a left tackle or a wide receiver or a big-time pass rusher, I think Mike Vrabel and this staff and this front office are going to make huge statements. They obviously have great draft picks, and this is about building around Drake May. If this team can find a pass rusher, a left tackle, and a wide receiver, they could make the playoffs. Because I think Drake May is going to be that good. I think Josh McDaniels with Drake May, with a real running game, with a real receiver, they could be absolutely dangerous, considering the defense was never the issue in terms of talent. I thought it was a lot to do with coaching. I think Vrabel and this new staff are going to make that defense closer to what Bill had them playing at than what they were previously. Now, hopefully Barmore can be healthy. Keon White playing at his best. Christian Gonzalez, one of the best corners in the league. Duggar in there, Peppers in there, Bentley back. They've got enough pieces on defense where I could see them being back at least above average, if not top 10. And if you could complement that with the on-the-rise top 12 quarterback play, you've got a potential playoff team with in my opinion, one of the better head coaches the last time he was in the NFL. So I could see the Patriots being like the riser of the year. But that being said, what's probably the median projection? It's probably being average, because I don't know if you can really expect them to take such a significant leap, but I'll probably try to sell myself on it. That being said, I think around 8 or 9 wins would be a great season for the Patriots and great improvement for the Patriots. So that's what I'm going to project for now, but it depends on how great this offseason is in my eyes, which it could be great. They could also sell. So we'll see. The Denver Broncos. They obviously made the playoffs last year. Will Bo Nix have a sophomore slump? Their O-line should still be very good. Their defense should still be very good. Their defense could be better. I mean, the linebackers, they could improve that area. They could maybe add another safety. I don't think they have that many free agents, and I really like their defensive line. I mean, Zach Allen's, Nick Benito, Cooper, they re-signed, I believe. John Franklin Myers. DJ Jones is a free agent, but that's not a huge loss. They could use a receiver. I could see this. I mean, playoffs is probably pretty logical. I mean, but then again, are we trying to pick new playoff teams right now? So this could be the team that falls out of the playoffs too, because they were the 7 seed. I don't trust Bo Nix like I trust Justin Herbert. But they're definitely in this category. Like they can make the playoffs, but I feel like they might just miss. A slightly tougher schedule, things like that, maybe slight regression, a little bit more of people kind of know what they are. They're not as surprised or shocked when they play them. The defense could maybe regress after playing amazing last year and just playing above their heads. So, yeah, I guess like playoffs is probably fair. Like maybe they make it, maybe they don't. They'll be right on the fringe, I think. The New Orleans Saints, Derek Carr is there. If Derek Carr is healthy, if Kellen Moore, can't see him being any worse than the Rizzler or Dennis Allen. Defensively, I'm not really quite sure they'll be any good at all. They'll probably be shit unless they find some pieces. But their salary cap is in such a poor position. Their O-line it was kind of okay when they were healthy. I think this team does need a year where they just suck, though. Like, I kind of feel like they're going to... I mean, it depends. It depends on what they do in the offseason, because if they pursue being competitive like they usually do, they'll probably be a promising team. But if they kind of just hit the reset and they don't try to like go in on free agents and things like that, they'll probably be bad, because like Derek Carr is getting old. They got a new coaching staff. Alvin Kamara is ancient at this point at running back. Olave and Shaheed are coming off of injuries. We'll see if Olave is still on the team. They might trade him. O-line's still a little spotty. Defense is probably pretty bad. Like, yeah, I mean, they're in a really bad division, though. So we'll see. I can't even scroll up. Are you serious with this? Come on. Come on. Okay, hold on, guys. I need to get a new mouse, guys. I need to get a new mouse. Okay. So, yeah, where did we have the Saints? Trash. It's going to be the projection for now, but I could be sold on a better season than that. The New York Giants, they suck. I mean, I don't even really care what happens to their team. Like, I like Neighbors. I like Tracy. I like Wandale. I don't mind Brian Daboll, but he's had a couple bad seasons in a row. The O-line is still spotty. It's going to take a lot of improvement. The quarterback, it's probably going to be a rookie or a veteran, and I'm not sure if that will work out necessarily. The defense is really bad. I mean, the front seven is decent, but they didn't play up to their ability. Their back end is really terrible. They need a lot of improvement. It's hard for me to believe because they don't have the quarterback and their defense is so bad. Just by virtue of that, I think they're trash. Not a lot of analysis needed for that team, to be honest. The Jets, I also think, are trash. They don't have a quarterback. I don't love the coaching staff, the new coaching staff. The O-line is going to be in flux with a lot of players that are rather injured and young or old. Though I don't know what's going on with Garrett Wilson. Their number 2 and number 3 receiver spots are debatable. I like their running backs. Their defense, I mean, Sauce completely regressed. Maybe he bounces back. Quinnen Williams is awesome. Quincy Williams is awesome. CJ's getting old. Their safeties are pretty bad. DJ Reed's a free agent, probably will leave. So their corner depth is spotty. Jermaine Johnson comes back. That should help. I like their D-line, actually. McDonald's good. I mean, they've got a D-line, but their O-line, their offense in general will be putrid. I just don't see how it's going to be any good, especially hiring a defensive coach. So I think they're going to be trash. The Eagles are up next. They're obviously a favorite. I mean, you could put them first. Jalen Hurts, it kind of feels like I hate on him, but it's just because I don't really bow at his feet because I don't really think he's the main reason they're successful. But the main reason they're successful is they have the best general manager in football. And this guy just continues to find ways to keep this team in such a spot where they're arguably the best roster, one of the most talented teams every single season. And he'll continue to do that. Their offensive line is going to continue to be dominant next year. I think Lane Johnson is returning, right? He's ageless. They've got Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith. Will they still have A.J. Brown? That will be interesting, but I think so. Saquon is Saquon. He should be at his peak for the next couple of years. So the offense is pretty much intact outside of offensive coordinator, which will be interesting because that happened last time they went to the Super Bowl and it fell off the map. Defensively, Fangio should still have this team almost even better next year because DeJean will be in year 2. Quignon will be in year 2. Bond, they've got to obviously sign, but Carter's in his rookie contract at his peak, or in entering his peak, I should say. Nolan Smith is rookie contract entering his peak. Josh Sweat could leave. They might have to replace him. Their defense should still be top 3 or 4. It might not be the best just because that's how defenses operate and work. They usually get worse, but I feel like they'll still be really, really awesome on defense. But they could be better on offense if Hurts just overall plays better through the passing game. That being said, Kellen Moore leaving does hurt. But I'm not a huge Kellen Moore guy. So, I mean, they're awesome. I mean, they could win the Super Bowl again. I wouldn't be that shocked. They could even be in the game and lose. They could have a 2014 Seahawks type thing where they get to the game, everyone thinks they're going to win, they lose. But we'll see. The Steelers, I think, so no quarterback. O-line is interesting. Young, interesting. Pickens is a nutcase. They don't have another receiver. Their running back, Najee, is a free agent, but I like Warren. Their offense is in shambles to a certain degree. Their defense is old. I want to be respectful to Tomlin, and Arthur Smith. I mean, that's a good coaching staff, but they don't have a quarterback. They don't have any receivers. Their O-line is young, but it's not good. Their defense is old. Mid is probably the right answer because they're not going to be bad because of Mike Tomlin, but they're not good. That's for sure. The Seattle Seahawks, they don't have a lot of cap space, which is weird. They really don't. We'll see what happens with their team. Geno is good. Their O-line is bad. I like that they switched their offensive coordinator. I like Kenneth Walker. I like Zach Charbonnet. I like their receivers. Could DK be on his way out? That would hurt them. Their defense could be better with McDonald, and I like some of the pieces, especially in the front seven. I like Witherspoon. I like Woolen. I love. Seattle's probably mid again, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know how much improvement they're going to be able to grasp this offseason, which is my problem. I still think offensive line is going to be a problem for them. They might be a playoff team, though. I wouldn't be that surprised by that. San Francisco. I think San Francisco is a dark horse. I don't think they're a favorite, but I think they're a dark horse. Uh, I think when you have Kyle, that brings a certain floor to your offense, especially their O-line. I could actually see being better. Trent's going to be back, hopefully healthy. It feels like left guard Banks is a free agent. I love Dominic Pooney. I think they're going to improve center. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things they do. We'll see what happens at left guard. Right tackle could also be improved with McKivitz, but he provides a steady floor for that position. Kittle is still awesome. I think moving on from Debo will help the offense, actually, especially if they bring in somebody like Devontae Adams. That would be awesome. Ayuk will be back eventually. Pearsall could be really good. Christian McCaffrey will be back. That should help. And, Jordan Mason was pretty good too. And even Isaac Guerrero was pretty good when they were running the ball. So, and Brock Purdy, I think their offense will be top 5 in the league, somewhere in that range. Defensively, I think they could be. It will be interesting to see what they do. Greenlaw's a free agent. Hufanga's a free agent. Charvarius Ward. I like their fundamentals though with Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Mustafa at safety, Green and Lenore at corner. They've got the pieces at each spot. They've kind of got to fill it out around those guys. Leonard Floyd still under contract at the opposite edge spot. Malik Collins. Their defense is going to need a reworking, but Robert Saleh being the coach on that side gives me a lot more faith. And I feel like they have a lot of cap space. So they're going to be able to do what they want, whether it be bring in a big time D tackle or D end, solidify that linebacker position. I also like D Winters quite a bit. I think he could start for them and he could be a breakout. They could very well get to the Super Bowl, depending on what they do this offseason. If they can strengthen the O-line, replace Debo adequately. I mean, and I didn't even bring up Jawan Jennings, who was their best receiver last year. They don't even really need to replace Debo. They could run out Ayuk, Jennings, and Pearsall just fine, and Kittle, and be just fine. And then maybe just spend all their money on defense and just load it up for Saleh. And that might make them a dominant team. With the defense and the offensive line improving. So they don't even really need to go after a receiver, but they could. So if that D-line and O-line are in better shape than they were the last 2 years, this is going to be a real team. This is going to be a real problem. So, yeah, the Niners are definitely a Super Bowl contender, I think. Like a dark horse because they need some answers. They need to answer a lot of questions. But if the thing goes right, they're going to be tough. The Tampa Bay Bucks, I think right now they're the favorite to win their division. I like their fundamentals of their O-line. Tristan Wirfs is, in my opinion, the best left tackle in the league. Gedeke is solid at right tackle, and I love their center. So they've got those pieces there. Baker is good. Running back is good with Bucky, everyone's favorite running back, and even Rachaad White's fine. Godwin, is he going to stay? I don't know, but I liked McMillan's improvement, throughout the year. Mike Evans is still awesome, and I'm not going to doubt that he's going to decline. Defensively, I do think that Bowles needs to freshen up. I am concerned about their offensive coordinator because I thought Cohen was fantastic. They were a little fortunate last year to win the division in some ways. They had to come from behind. Their defense, their secondary, I don't know. Winfield should be healthier this year. David's getting old. Their pass rush is I love Cansey and Diaby. I think they need to add around them. Vita Vea is obviously a beast, but he's not a pass rusher. They could use another edge rusher. They could use another linebacker. They could solidify their secondary. And I'm not sure about the offensive coordinator, but I don't really see any team being better than them right now in their division, so I'll put them in the playoffs, but I think they're going to be more of a mid team that makes the playoffs because they're in a bad division. That's kind of how I feel they are right now. Tennessee is probably going to be trash. The O-line still needs to improve. They don't have a quarterback to speak of. Their head coach is a jabroni. Running back is okay. Tony Pollard and Spears, I don't mind. Receiver is a concern outside of Ridley, really. Defensively, I like the coach. Simmons could leave. He might be a future Patriot. The The defense might be in shambles. I'm concerned about that. They might be the worst team in the league, to be honest. Washington, I don't think you could put them in favorite as much as some people would want to. I think dark horse is fair. But So I think the Eagles will probably win the division. I don't see how they wouldn't, to be honest. They're too talented. Unless there's injuries. Jaden is sweet. I love that they were able to keep Cliff. Their O-line is solid. Will they improve it? Running back could be improved. Wide receiver could be improved. They've got plenty of cap space. Their defense definitely needs to improve at corner and pass rush. They're getting kind of old, too. I mean, they signed a lot of old players. I want to put them in dark horse, but I don't have a lot of faith. I mean, maybe even playoffs. I kind of feel like they're not going to be as good as next year. That's kind of my feeling, guys. Like, I know that a lot of people say I'm a hater. I feel like there's sophomore slump. There's more tape. Cliff Kingsbury has been a guy that doesn't really evolve or adapt very well, at least in my opinion. They do have so many flaws that they're going to have to try to improve. And it kind of felt like there was a miracle run. They won a lot of close games. And that's not just repeatable. So I think they will be probably a playoff team, but I think they will regress to a certain degree. I don't think they're going to get to the NFC Championship off the top of my head. So I'll put them in the playoffs. People might hate that, but it is what it is. All right, so this is our list right now, guys. We've got Eagles, Ravens, Bills in the favorite category. Dark horses, Lions, Texans, Chiefs, Chargers, Niners. Playoffs, Packers, and this isn't in order. Packers, Bengals. These are playoff potential teams, not necessarily going to or miss the playoffs. Rams, Broncos, Bucks, and Washington. Mid, we've got the Bears, we've got the Cowboys, the Jags, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Patriots, the Steelers, and the Seahawks. I feel good about that category. Promising teams that aren't quite terrible, but they could be good, but they could suck. The Cardinals, the Panthers, the Colts, the Falcons. Trash, the worst teams in the league. I feel pretty darn good about all these teams, except for maybe the Saints, depending on what they do. The Raiders, if they can get a quarterback. The Raiders might be promising, to be honest, but that's kind of how I feel right now. Obviously, I have no idea what these teams are going to do in the offseason, guys. This was a long one, but I felt like it was needed just to give you my opinion on every team in the NFL. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching the entire video. If you did, put TB12 in the comments. That's TB12, the GOAT. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. Deuces, guys.